that's very personal to me and that I think affects a lot of the youth here. We all know that the family is a gift from God, that before we were born, God decided who we'd be with. He decided our siblings, He decided our parents, and thank God that we were born in a Pentecostal Romanian church. Amen.
Amen.
I've noticed that many people, sadly, don't respect the family that God has created. I remember I was talking with a person from school, wasn't Pokei, and she told me that when her little sister would tell her, "I hate you," she'd respond back with, "I hate you too." There's no love there. Love isn't there at all. There's only hate. And it's not just in the world. I've seen certain people in the church where in front of me they'll be all sweet and all kind, and then they talk to their sibling and they show them all sorts of anger and hate. I don't think they realize it, and I know I didn't when I had this problem. So I'd like to focus on the family. I'd like to look at the life of David and see how are we supposed to act in the family and treat the family. I'll be reading from 1 Samuel 17. In 1 Samuel 17, we see David and Goliath. That's the title. We know that the Philistines challenged Israel to this war. They said, "If we win, you'll be our servants, but if you win, we'll be yours." And we know that David's brothers were in the battle. We see in verse 15 where David gets involved. I'm reading till verse 20. But David occasionally went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near and presented himself 40 days, morning and evening. Then Jesse said to his son David, "Take now for your brothers an ephah of this dried grain and these 10 loaves, and run to your brothers at the camp. And carry these 10 cheeses to the captain of their 1,000, and see how your brothers fare, and bring back news of them." Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. So David rose early in the morning, left the sheep with the keeper, and took the things, and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the camp as the army was going out to the fight, and shouting for the battle. The first point I'd like to focus on is how David respected his father. Here we can see two main things that David did. The first thing it says is that he did as he had commanded him. I noticed there are two types of people when it comes to obeying their parents. There are those that don't obey at all, that just completely ignore it, and there are those that try to go halfway. In this case, David did neither of those. He made sure to do it exactly as he was told. First, he did it exactly as he was commanded. He didn't try to find a way around it. He doesn't say, "Oh, it doesn't fit my schedule, Dad." He understood that he was under the submission of the father. He was under the submission of his parents. One analogy that I came up with was that soldiers, when they're told what to do, they drop everything. It doesn't matter what they're doing. If they were to say, "Drop it, give me 20, they do it. And the thing that I don't understand is why don't we do it to our parents? In fact, Paul tells us in Galatians that we need to be soldiers. Soldiers on the battlefield, so why don't we treat our parents like the commander? In fact, God put them over us. I know I ask people often, if your parents told you to drop down and give them 20 push-ups, would you do it? And people give me a weird look. But it's true. You should, because if your parents said to do something, you need to have obedience. I pray that God gives us this obedience. Next thing that David did, verse 20, it says, David rose early in the morning. It doesn't say that he tried to do it halfway. It doesn't say that he just did it, but he did it the right way. I know, I used to be really big into video games, and the problem with certain video games is that they're involved in matches, right? So they're short 5-minute matches. And so when you're in the middle of that match, you don't think it's a big deal. Like, your parents will call you and say, "Just a minute, I need to finish this game. I need to finish this match. It's important." But in reality, is it more important than obeying your parents? No. It's not from God. It's only for the flesh. And I've seen a lot of people, when they play these video games, they just say, "1 minute, I need to finish." How can we say that to our parents? How can we? We need to do it right then and there, because that's how God commanded us. A soldier will do everything he says whenever he is told. He drops everything and does it exactly. I know my dad, one thing he always tells us when we're working, right now we're working on our basement, he always tells me, be all in. All in. And those words are like ingrained in me, because that's how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be all in, have our complete focus in the task at hand. We can't be thinking about other things. We can't be going through this life and be thinking about other things. I know when my dad says, "Johnny, hand me that," it doesn't matter what I'm doing, even if I'm doing something else. Like I know I was doing the painting, my dad was doing the flooring. I know that if he said, "Johnny, go get me the ruleta," I drop it, go get the ruleta, even if I was in the middle of something, because I knew that that was important. I knew it was something he needed at the moment. I pray that we do this. And so this is the very first thing David does. We see that he obeys his father in full. We see that he does it. He doesn't try to cross any corners. And so when he gets to the battlefield, he starts asking around. He's like, what's going on? What's all the fuss about? And it says in verse 28, now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David. And he said, why did you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you are come down to see the battle. Eliab in this case was completely wrong. He completely missed the point. He made a lot of mistakes here. One thing he did was assuming, which we like to do a lot. We like to assume other people's intentions. We like to assume other people's mentalities, which can put us in positions like this. There are numerous times in the Bible. I remember I was reading even further when David was getting old. One of his sons assumed that he was supposed to be the heir, and then he got killed for it because Solomon was supposed to be heir. God had said so. In the same case here, you get yourself into trouble when you assume. And so because of this, David, technically in human terms, had every right to be angry. His brother had just assumed, not only that, but he had accused him of doing something wrong. He said that he had a pride. He said that he knew his heart was false. I know that many of us, including me, would have taken that chance to lash out at him, say, how dare you assume? I have the authority of my father. But that's not what he says. In verse 29, David says, what have I done now? Is there not a cause? When I read that, that's such a gentle response. It's not saying, you idiot, my dad told me, why are you assuming? It's asking, are you sure of what you're saying? Can you double check? It's such a gentleness in his voice. And I don't see this almost anywhere. I don't. Many people would take this chance to lash out, even in the family. Sibling on sibling rivalry. They take the chance. Whether that's the little sibling trying to gain some sort of authority or some sort of power over the older, or the older using that authority thinking that, oh, because I'm like a year or two older, I have the right to say that. But why do we do that? David didn't. And think about it in context, right? David was about to go fight a giant. Think about it. If David had lashed out at his brother, would God have helped him? Would God have been with him? Probably not. So then why, as young people, do we argue with our siblings? Do we lash out at them and do wrong and then take a test and expect to get an A? Or go to church and then take Shina? Or expect some sort of success? God's not going to give it to us because he has given us a chance to show that we love him and that he's changed us. And then we take our siblings for granted. I've noticed it's a ton of reasons, but it's mainly because we just take our siblings for granted. We don't realize how important it is. I have 4 other siblings. I'm one of 5. The youngest is 5 years old. I've learned things from him about the Bible I didn't even know. And he's 5. I'm supposed to be 18. And so why do we treat them so differently if we have some sort of authority? I know for me personally, these situations of retaliation have caused a lot of regret. I had a very loose tongue as a child, and there were many nights where I sat and thought about it, and it was that click that I realized, and I said, man, I should not have done that. And there were many connections that I had that were very broken. I didn't have a good relationship with my older brother. It was always the alpha male struggle. I didn't treat my siblings and my sisters the right way, and I regretted it. But thank God that I had time. Thank God that things have changed and things have gotten better. The question is, how long are we going to win? How long are you going to win? Because I know some people I've heard, they don't talk to siblings for 10, 20, 30 years. I know a brother, Bethel, he said he grew up Nepokoyi. He wasn't a Nepokoyi family at all, and he would argue and rival with his brothers all the time. I think he was one of 6 all brothers. And he said now that he's Pokoyi, he doesn't even know where his brothers is. Imagine not knowing where your sibling even is. I don't know what I'd do if I was in that position. So don't wait, it's not too late. God has given us this gift, and we need to use it. And so I pray we'll go into this prayer thinking about what David did, thinking about how we need to do exactly as they say without question, that we need to make sure that we do it the right way, the way that God says, the way that David did, and that we'll respect our siblings as the gift they are. Let's go into prayer. Amen.